A rational person can find peace by cultivating indifference to things beyond their control. Naval Ravikant. If you cannot master your own mind, then what difference do wealth or happiness make, other than being untamed horses you ride only to be dragged along? We live in an age where data has surpassed humanity's ability to digest it. Every day, an average person consumes more information than their ancestors did in an entire lifetime. Yet paradoxically, the more information we have, the less wise we become, the more connected, the more isolated, and the freer we are to choose, the more bound we feel to a life we're not even sure we truly chose. So how can a person in this era of turmoil both build wealth and maintain clarity? How can the pursuit of achievement not become the root cause of a lifetime of unease? And is it possible to succeed in this world without losing oneself? The answer, if there is one, does not lie in dogma, nor in glittering promises like, just follow these 7 steps. The answer perhaps lies in how a person lives. How to live so that every penny earned does not impoverish the intellect. How to live so that every hour worked is not the price paid for peace. How to live so that every achievement gained does not become a burden on the soul. The book you are about to hear, by Naval Ravikant, was not written for you to admire the author, but for you to return and reflect. It is a map, but it doesn't show you the way. It is a mirror, but it doesn't reflect your face. Rather, it reflects how you look at that face. You may not agree with everything, but if you listen carefully, each passage here will awaken something that has long slumbered within you. And perhaps, like me, you will find that wealth or happiness is not a destination. It is the way you walk when you are no longer driven by the need to prove yourself, nor held back by fear. Part 1, The Fabric of Wealth. Wealth does not come from luck. If there's one thing I hope you understand first, it's this: don't sit there wishing for luck. Don't bet on a lottery ticket your entire life. I am not here to offer you promises of a sudden windfall. Instead, I will show you the path I have walked. A path not based on random coincidence at all. It relies on self-awareness, accumulation of knowledge, and acting at the right time and in the right way. It's not short, but it's clear, and if you are patient enough, it will be yours too. I used to be an ordinary person with no connections, no inheritance, no outstanding background. But I learned the right things. I read thousands of books, not to become a scholar, but to save myself from ignorance. Each page was a brick I laid on the path to financial freedom. But don't misunderstand, freedom isn't about having a lot of money. It's the ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want. Freedom is true wealth. I'm not teaching you how to get rich quick. I'm only sharing what I've learned through experience. There is a formula for wealth, and it's not found in schools, nor in luck or chance. It lies within you, in what you know, and how you interact with this world. People often think that getting rich requires luck. But if you look closely, sustainably wealthy people rarely look like lottery winners. They have a method. They build their wealth on unchanging principles, and they don't gamble, they accumulate. Getting rich doesn't require anyone else's permission. You don't need teachers, parents, or investors to nod their heads. You just need one decision: I will work for my own freedom. The rest is the journey. To begin, you need to redefine what you're looking for. Not money, but assets, not a high salary, but leverage, not hard work, but wisdom. Look around you. The richest people typically don't work for a salary. They own, they create, they utilize time, technology, and people in ways others don't consider. They don't sell their time for money. They build systems that earn money for them, even while they sleep. I'm not advising you to quit your job immediately. I'm just saying that if you want freedom, you need to gradually shift from working for wages to creating value. That value must be replicable, scalable. It shouldn't depend on whether or not you're sitting at your desk. That's what I call leverage. In the old world, leverage was manpower. Whoever had more people under them was stronger. Then came capital. Whoever had more money could invest, trade, and expand their influence. But today, there's a new form of leverage: products and technology. With a piece of code, a design, a platform, you can serve millions of people without being physically present. That's how you escape the hour-for-income ratio. I want you to understand this very clearly. If you don't use leverage, you will always be limited. No matter how hard you work, there are only 24 hours in a day. Leverage helps you overcome that limit. But leverage is only effective when paired with something else. Specific knowledge, not something everyone learns in school, but a deep, personalized understanding that is irreplaceable. It's the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. When you have that, you become uncompetitive because you are unique. Remember, you cannot get rich doing what everyone else does, and you also cannot get rich doing what you hate. The only way to be both happy and wealthy is to do what you love and become excellent at it. I don't have universal advice. Everyone has their own path, but there's a common denominator. Successful people are self-taught. They don't wait for others to guide them. They read, they experiment, they fail, they learn from experience, and they constantly evolve. You can start anywhere. I started with an old computer and boundless curiosity. I had no one backing me, but I had something more important, the burning desire for freedom. The problem isn't how many resources you have, but how you use them. I once knew people with millions of dollars in hand who still lived in fear. They feared loss, feared being surpassed, feared being exposed as unworthy of their current success. Meanwhile, there are others who started from scratch but step by step built a solid foundation not just of money, but of wisdom and character. It took me many years to understand that making money is a skill, not fate, nor a game of chance. Like any other skill, it can be learned, practiced, and refined over time. The problem is that most people have never been taught it properly. They learn how to spend money before they learn how to create value. They chase income without understanding the difference between earning money and keeping it. I'm not suggesting you learn to be stingy or a hoarder. I'm suggesting you learn to become financially self-sufficient, a state where you are no longer dominated by worries about daily bread, so that you can then live with curiosity, passion, and compassion. Wealth doesn't start with a full bank account. It starts with clarity. Clarity about what you want, clarity about the value you can bring to others, clarity about how you use your time each day to accumulate that. I've witnessed many people fail not because they lacked intelligence or opportunity, but because they couldn't stick with one direction long enough to see results. They jumped from one idea to another, swept away by every new market trend. While what's truly needed is patience with a system you trust. That's why I advise you not to seek instant success. Build a structured life instead of chasing money. Chase competence. Build your life experience, knowledge capital, relationship capital, and then money will find you. But here's a paradox you need to grasp clearly. To become wealthy, you must learn not to think too much about money. When money becomes the sole goal, you easily lose clarity. You make short-term decisions, trading off long-term value. You become fearful and competitive instead of creative and collaborative. The best way to get rich, in fact, is to create value far exceeding what you're paid. Do more than expected. Become a trustworthy person. Someone others want to work with. Someone they trust with important tasks. If you can do that, money will just be a consequence. I'm not telling you these things to sugarcoat reality. This journey isn't easy. It demands that you let go of prejudices, habits, and sometimes even old relationships. You have to relearn how to live, how to think, how to act. But if you can do that, you will become a person who no longer fears. Because you will know that anytime, anywhere, you can start over and rebuild from scratch. Always remember that the world owes you nothing, but it always craves people who can solve problems creatively. If you learn to become such a person, someone who brings solutions, who makes others better, who makes things more efficient, you will never be unemployed, and you will never lack anything. There's a concept often used to test one's self-worth. If I were stripped of all my assets, lost all my social media presence, could I rebuild from scratch within 5 years? If the answer is yes, and I believe it is, then I know I have truly achieved freedom. Because I possess the most important thing, the ability to create value from nothing. Ask yourself, if you were placed in a strange city, without a penny, no acquaintances, no clear opportunities, could you live and succeed there? If not, then your journey continues. If so, then congratulations. You have become truly free, and freedom, as I've said, is the greatest wealth. To reach where I stand today, I learned one important thing. Wealth cannot be copied, but it can be recreated from the inner strength within each person. Not everyone needs a groundbreaking idea. Sometimes, you just need a different perspective on the same problem that millions are facing. That difference, if applied at the right time and in the right place, can become the most powerful asset you've ever owned. You might think that today's world is too crowded, that everything has already been done. But the truth is, most people are just repeating each other. They are following existing models, not creating anything new. If you have the ability to combine old ideas into a new form, to innovate fresh approaches, then you are 100 steps ahead. Remember, the highest earners are not necessarily the best in a single field, but those who can uniquely combine multiple fields. They are people who understand programming, know marketing, and are sensitive to user psychology, or people who have aesthetic sensibility, understand technology, and possess organizational and operational skills. It is precisely these intersections between different skills that are the real goldmines. It took me many years to understand that learning to code isn't to become a programmer, learning to read isn't to become a scholar, learning to speak isn't to become an orator. All these skills are means, and if you know how to piece them together, you will become indispensable. People often evaluate others by their degrees, experience, by what society can measure. But what is truly valuable is what cannot be quantified: the ability to self-learn, tireless curiosity, a relentless attitude toward improvement, and a mindset that knows how to get up after failure. Invest in yourself before you think about investing in the market. Use your early years to read a lot, live deeply, and fail profoundly. Because only after you know who you are, can you know where you should go. And if you're not ready to understand yourself, then all financial strategies are meaningless. I once said, reading books is the backbone of life. It's how you absorb the wisdom of hundreds of people, thousands of years of history, in just a few months. And reading the right books is even more important than reading many books. You don't need to read to know everything. You read to choose the right path, to avoid repeating old mistakes, to reach your destination faster, deeper, and more meaningfully. Today, too many people are busy, but few are truly effective. They work all day but don't know why. They accumulate money but don't understand its purpose. They learn a new skill just because they see others learning it. But true wealth comes from clarity of purpose, when you know exactly what you're building and for whom. Every step then becomes lighter, simpler, and more profound. I don't have a magic formula. What I have is a series of principles tested in my own life and by many friends I know. I know that you cannot become wealthy if you constantly hand over decision-making power to others, your boss, your employer, your parents, society. You must be responsible for your own life. Only when you take responsibility will you begin to act in a way that truly empowers you. There's one thing I always repeat: don't try to do everything. Choose one thing you can become truly excellent at, an irreplaceable skill, and persevere with it until you reach a level the world cannot ignore. Then, you won't have to ask for opportunities anymore. Opportunities will seek you out. This isn't easy. You will feel lost, doubtful. You'll feel foolish when you start. You'll see others moving faster, getting richer, becoming more famous. You'll have doubts that perhaps you chose the wrong path. But it is in that very moment, when you continue to move forward, that you create distance from the majority. Persevere. Not blindly, but with strategic resilience. You must know when to change course and when to dig in. You must learn to self-correct, not relying on external praise or criticism. You need to build a system in your mind and in your life to keep yourself clear-headed amidst a chaotic world. I'm not talking about slowing down or living a meditative life. I'm talking about living purposefully, living each day as an intentional step. When you live that way, you are no longer dependent on external results. You grow rich from within, and no one can take that away from you. There's a question I've asked myself for years. If tomorrow I lost everything: assets, status, reputation, what would remain within me strong enough to start over? And as I turned each page of my life, I realized the only thing left was my mindset, not knowledge, because knowledge can become obsolete, not skills, because skills can become outdated, but mindset, the ability to see problems deeply, to make decisions amidst chaos, to hold steady amidst storms of change. That mindset came from a long chain of difficult choices, from choosing to read books instead of entertainment, choosing to learn programming even when no one required it, choosing to write a blog when no one was reading, choosing to invest in myself even before anyone believed I had value. It came from enduring loneliness, accepting misunderstanding, and daring to be different in silence. Many people ask, how do I know if I'm on the right path? I don't have a ready answer, but I have an important signal. If each day you feel more authentic to your true nature, without needing to play any role for the world, then you are on the right path. The less you need anyone to validate you, the less you feel envious or controlled by others, the more you have begun to approach true freedom. Wealth in its deepest sense doesn't come from money, but from intellectual and emotional independence. A wealthy person is someone who doesn't need to buy attention, doesn't need to prove anything. They do what's right because it's right. They act because it's necessary, not because they'll be praised. I know this might sound far-fetched, but I once lived with a sense of inadequacy, struggled with the fear of being left behind, made decisions out of anxiety over not being recognized. And I witnessed myself becoming small, impoverished not in money, but in dignity, in peace. From there, I began to change, not by reading another success book, but by observing how I lived each day. I decluttered things that weighed me down: people, objects, habits, applications. I started measuring wealth not by the numbers in my account, but by the quiet stillness I found in my mind when waking up early in the morning. And I discovered something peculiar. The more I simplified my life, the clearer I saw my own value. When you don't need much, you know exactly what you're looking for. And when you know what you're looking for, you'll realize the shortest path. No need to follow the crowd, no need to compete fiercely with the world. You don't have to become someone special to be wealthy. You just need to be special in a very small niche. You just need a unique combination of skills, perspectives, personality, and beliefs that, when brought together, makes you singular. That very uniqueness is what others cannot outsource, cannot train, cannot copy. That is what makes you irreplaceable. I'm not saying this to pressure you to be different, but for you to understand that if you dare to live authentically, you are already different. What holds you back isn't the world out there, but the fear within you. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of ridicule. But if you can overcome that layer of fear, you will touch a realm of freedom that no one can take away. On that journey, I learned a very important concept. Compounding over time isn't just financial compound interest, but compound interest in every behavior, habit, and relationship. If you consistently learn every day, write down your thoughts every week, and upgrade a small skill every month, you will become a version of yourself that today you cannot even imagine. You don't need to change the whole world overnight. You just need to take one small, consistent step forward, and let time do the rest. Time is the most powerful machine if you're on its side, but also the most terrible destroyer if you waste it every day on meaningless things. Let time be your companion. Don't try to deceive it. Don't look for shortcuts. Don't get caught up chasing fleeting applause. Slow down, look deep within, and ask yourself, if I only had 5 years left to live, what would I choose to learn, to do, to live with whom? That is your true map to wealth. Not as a dry lesson, but as a whisper from someone who has lived in worry, been lost, and stumbled through very human mistakes. I want you to remember this. The journey to wealth is not an upward journey, it is an inward journey. Inward to where? To yourself. You can read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of podcasts, follow every successful person on social media. But in the end, you will still face a simple truth. Do you truly believe in what you're doing? Do you truly feel free living this way? If not, then no matter how much money you have, how many likes, how many people praise you, you will still feel empty. I know because I used to be like that. I once believed that if I had $1 million, I'd be happy. Then I achieved it, and I still felt restless. I set a goal for 10 million, then 100 million, and then I understood that it wasn't a limit of money, but a limit of perception. I was trying to fill a void with something unsuitable. True wealth isn't about how many things you can buy, but about what else you still need to buy to feel sufficient. The less you need, the freer you are. This might sound contrary to modern logic, but it's a truth you'll only grasp after having gone through enough cycles of desire. Ask yourself again, am I living according to others' standards? Am I trying to become some ideal just to be recognized? If so, pause and begin to relearn how to live authentically, starting with the smallest things. What do you want to read? What time do you want to wake up? Who do you want to spend time with? What do you want to be remembered for? From there, you will start rebuilding everything not with haste, but with mindfulness. You will no longer work hard to earn money. Instead, you will live authentically to become valuable. That value, if genuine enough, will attract money without you having to chase it. Build a life you don't need to escape from. Don't wait until the weekend to be happy. Don't wait until retirement to live as you wish. Because if you don't know how to enjoy a cup of coffee this morning, you won't know how to enjoy a mansion later on. Wealth is not a future state. It is an attitude of living in the present. Don't worry if you're moving slowly. Worry if you don't know where you're going, because a person who knows where they're going will eventually arrive, even if walking. But someone unsure of their direction, even in a supercar, will only wander aimlessly in a maze. And finally, be grateful. Gratitude is not a moral attitude, it is a life strategy. When you are grateful, you stop comparing. When you are grateful, you no longer feel a sense of lack. When you are grateful, you clearly see what you have. And from there, you build something better. A grateful person is not poor, even if they have nothing in hand, because they always know where to start. I cannot live for you, nor can I show you the exact path, but I hope that through each shared word, you will find a piece of a mirror large enough for you to reflect on yourself. And if one day you reach immeasurable wealth rich in thought, in emotion, in choice, then you will no longer need anyone's recognition because you will be fully and freely yourself. And that, I believe, is true wealth. Next section, happiness. I once believed that happiness was something that came last, after money, after success, after everything had stabilized. I thought I needed to achieve something before I had the right to feel at peace. I placed happiness as a reward, like a trophy for the winner. And then I realized I didn't know when the finish line was. I just kept running, and the further I ran, the longer the distance between me and happiness grew. That's when I stopped, not because I was tired, but because I doubted. I doubted all the assumptions society taught me, that a successful person is surely happy, that the more one owns, the more fulfilled one feels, that the more famous one is, the more loved one becomes. And I began to ask myself, what if all of that is wrong? I turned inward and began to observe, not observing the world, but observing my own mind. When was I happy? When was I at peace? When was I swayed by anger, anxiety, envy? And from that, I discovered something incredibly simple yet profoundly strange. Happiness doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from how I interpret circumstances. Imagine two people facing the same situation, losing their job. One person feels panicked, disoriented, like their life is falling apart. The other feels relieved, as if just given an opportunity to start anew. The difference isn't in the event, but in the story each person tells themselves. And looking back, I realized my entire life was just a long series of stories I had authored myself. When I thought I wasn't good enough, that was a story. When I thought others were better than me, that was also a story. And I lived by those stories, sometimes as a victim, sometimes as a relentless pursuer, forgetting that I could change the plot at any time. That's when I started practicing mindfulness, not as a trend, not as a religion, but like someone seeking to make peace with their own mind. I learned to observe thoughts without getting carried away by them. I learned to look at an emotion without judgment. I learned to stay in the present moment, even though my mind was very good at replaying the past or projecting into the future. And I began to see that happiness isn't a state, but a skill, like learning to ride a bicycle, difficult at first, with falls. But once learned, you can't unlearn happiness. It becomes a part of you. It no longer depends on whether the market is up today or if your boss praised you. Happiness came when I let go of the idea that I had to become someone. I no longer tried to modify myself to fit expectations. I no longer compared my journey to others' maps. And then I felt lighter. I started smiling at small things, felt grateful for a calm afternoon, felt at peace when a day passed without needing to prove anything. Many people think happiness is a kind of peak emotion, like elation, excitement, euphoria, but I don't see it that way. For me, happiness is like a calm surface of water. No waves, no swirling currents, just a space quiet enough for me to clearly see everything reflected within it, including sadness, anger, or anxiety. I don't chase away negative emotions. I just don't let them dictate my actions. There's a moment I'll always remember. I was sitting alone, no phone, no background music, no goals, simply sitting. And I realized I wanted nothing, desired nothing more, wished to change nothing. And in that moment, I felt completely full for no reason, without needing an excuse, without needing to achieve, just simply present and happy. If defined this way, happiness cannot be taken away. No one can steal your happiness, no event can break it. Because it's not out there. It's within you, in how you view the world, in how you dialogue with yourself, in how you choose to react to anything that happens. But don't misunderstand that I'm always calm. I've also been irritable, lost my temper, argued childishly. I've fallen into states of restlessness, fatigue, and discomfort with myself. The only difference is that now I can see it happening, right as it unfolds, and instead of sinking into it, I choose to observe from the outside. That's a skill not innate, not due to enlightenment, but practiced every day. You can't learn mindfulness from one meditation session. It doesn't come from a 3-day course. It comes from slowing down long enough to see how your inner mechanisms operate. Like when you realize that every time you're criticized, you react by withdrawing, getting angry, or becoming defensive. And you start to see, this isn't me. This is a reflex. True happiness begins when you can distinguish between who you are and what are merely pre-programmed responses. Most of the time, we don't live as human beings, but as a series of conditioned reflexes. When someone ignores you, you feel worthless. When others succeed, you feel threatened. When things don't go according to plan, you feel like a failure. But you can stop and ask yourself, is that really true? Do I really need others' validation to feel worthy? Is that person truly happier than me because they have more money? Is my life truly wrong just because things aren't going smoothly today? I call that the art of dismantling false beliefs. We carry too many beliefs from childhood to adulthood, beliefs instilled by others, formed by culture, education, or even traumatic experiences. But if we don't re-examine them, we'll live our whole lives within that mold and call it our nature. For me, spiritual freedom is the prerequisite for all forms of happiness. You cannot be happy if your mind is constantly stretched by hundreds of invisible arrows. Expectations, standards, fears, ambitions, past, future. To let go, you need to recognize. To recognize, you need to be silent. To be silent, you need to stop. And that is the hardest thing in today's world, to stop. We are encouraged to always move forward, develop, improve ourselves, optimize our lives. But no one tells you that sometimes the most necessary thing is to do nothing at all, just sit and breathe. Just listen to the sounds of your mind. Just let all emotions pass without needing to act on them. Someone once asked me, if there was only one thing you could teach your child, what would it be? I thought for a long time and replied, teach them how to sit alone in silence, doing nothing, and still feel at peace. If a person can do that, they will never be led astray by life. Because from that point, you will no longer depend on anything to feel okay. No phone needed, no partner needed, no praise needed, no entertainment needed. You will no longer be addicted to dopamine from short-term stimuli. And when you escape that addiction, you begin to taste the true flavor of life. A clear, pure taste without pretense. I'm not saying you have to live like a hermit. I'm not denying the joy from connection, achievement, or experience. I'm just saying that if you can't be happy alone, you won't truly be happy with someone else beside you either. If you can't feel sufficient when you have nothing, then everything you acquire is merely compensation, not true fulfillment. I'm no longer chasing happiness because it's not at the end of the road. It's present in every step if I choose to see it. We live in an age where everything is measured. Number of likes, followers, effective work hours, goals completed in a week. In that world, happiness is turned into an index, a personal development goal like everything else. You download a meditation app, set a goal to feel peaceful, and then blame yourself when you don't achieve that tranquility. I used to be like that. I turned happiness into a project. I scheduled it, tracked progress, noted each day if I felt happy or sad, but happiness didn't come. It doesn't like to be managed like a KPI. It doesn't visit when you try to summon it with spreadsheets and discipline. It comes when you stop searching, when you no longer demand anything from the present moment. I began to understand that all suffering arises from my non-acceptance of reality as it is. I wanted sunshine when it was raining. I wanted others to change when they didn't want to. I wanted my mood to improve without understanding why it was disturbed. And all that resistance turned into stress, frustration, anger, sadness. But when I learned to tell myself, perhaps this is just a part of life, a strange thing happened. The discomfort was still there, but I was no longer swept away by it. I could remain with that imperfection without needing to resolve it immediately. And then, much suffering simply dissolved. Not because I had conquered it, but because I no longer resisted it. I once thought I needed to control everything to be safe. But the more I controlled, the more insecure I became. The more I tried to predict, the more unstable I felt. The more I wanted certainty, the smaller I felt amidst an uncertain world. And then I realized that peace doesn't come when I control everything, but when I learn to live with uncertainty. There's a habit I built very early on. Every morning before starting work, I sit still for 15 minutes, doing nothing at all, no formal meditation, no trying to calm my mind, simply being present. And in that moment, I let everything come and go as it wishes. Sometimes it's thoughts about tasks, sometimes childhood memories, sometimes an unnamed feeling of emptiness, and I don't try to change anything. Over the years, that moment became the foundation for everything else. It's the stillness between waves, the place I return to whenever I feel swept away by the external grind. And each time I return, I see more clearly. Nothing outside of me can bring lasting happiness. Everything comes and goes, only presence remains. I'm not saying this as an enlightened person. I still get disappointed, still get angry, still doubt myself. But I don't let those states define me. I see them as clouds passing through my mind, and I am the sky. When I see others suffering, I no longer judge as before. I see them battling their own minds, just as I do. I see them trying to find a foothold in this chaotic world. And I understand that everyone is on their own journey with their own lessons. You cannot help someone overcome pain by telling them to be positive. You can only be present as a quiet space they can lean on when needed. Someone asked me, "So what is your purpose in life, if not success or happiness?" I replied, "To become the most natural version of myself without feeling ashamed of it." When you live authentically, you don't need anyone's permission, you no longer need to play a role, you no longer worry about being discovered as not good enough, because you have already accepted your own imperfections. And when you stop trying to be someone else, you have the energy to do what is truly meaningful, not to achieve anything, but because you find joy in the action itself. That's when happiness is no longer a reward, it becomes a flow. If I could go back in time and whisper one thing into the ear of my younger self, I would say, don't try to please the world. Learn to sit quietly with yourself, because you will spend your entire life in your own skin, not in the eyes of others. And when you know how to befriend your inner self, then no matter where you are home. I once lived like an actor, not on stage, but in everyday life. I played the role of a successful person, an interesting person, a knowledgeable person, an optimist. And then one day I was exhausted because the more I performed, the further I drifted from myself. The more loved I was, the lonelier I felt, because I knew they didn't truly love me, but the version I created for them to see. When I started peeling off layer after layer of masks, I felt strange. I didn't know who I was without titles, achievements, identifying symbols. I felt empty. But from that emptiness, something new began to sprout. The feeling of being myself without needing to boast, without needing to hide, without needing to compare, just being myself as I truly am. And I discovered something profound. Vulnerability is not a weakness, but a gateway to true happiness. When I dared to admit, I'm tired, I don't know, I've also felt jealous like you, a door opened. A place where true connection begins, no longer shallow conversations, but the presence between two souls. This world doesn't need you to be perfect, it needs you to be real. Because only when you are real do you allow others to be real. And in that authenticity, a special kind of happiness is born. A happiness that is not loud, not ostentatious, but quietly nurtured from within. Many people confuse joy and happiness. Joy is momentary, it's when you get a promotion, buy a new item, or someone admires you. Happiness is different, it doesn't need external stimulation. It's a foundation, a deep feeling that you are living true to yourself, and when joy subsides, happiness remains. I learned that simplicity is the foundation of happiness, not simplicity in the sense of scarcity, but in the sense of sufficiency, needing nothing more. You can have a small wardrobe without worrying about choosing clothes every morning. You can live in a small apartment without worrying about too much maintenance. You can have a small but deep circle of friends. And from that, you have more space for what's truly important. Clarity. Clarity is something the happiest people I've ever met all share. They don't need many things because they know what they want. They are not swayed by fads, by trends, by the fear of missing out. They don't expend energy maintaining an image because they have nothing to prove. They are not afraid of silence, don't need constant entertainment. They can sit alone for hours and feel like they are in the midst of a profound conversation. I'm not saying you have to abandon the world to find happiness. I'm just inviting you to ask one question: what in this life is enough for me? And if you can answer that, you have taken a very long step compared to most of the world, where enough is always postponed for a future that never arrives. I also once thought that having a partner would make me happy, and indeed there were such moments. But if I don't feel sufficient when I'm alone, then love is just a temporary filler. I would easily turn the other person into a savior, a mirror to validate my worth. And then I would fear losing them, I would control, I would demand. Not because I didn't love them, but because I couldn't love myself. And from that, I understood. Happiness cannot come from a relationship if it doesn't start from within. You cannot share what you don't possess. You can only give others a sense of safety if you are safe with yourself. You can only truly listen to someone if you are no longer swayed by the noise in your own head. I am not good at relationships. I've made many mistakes, once letting my career overshadow important things. But I learned that a person who can sit next to you in silence without feeling awkward, that's the person you should keep by your side. And if you can sit with yourself in silence without feeling empty, then you have taken a very long step towards freedom. I once thought happiness was the feeling of being the center of the world, where everything revolved around me, where people listened, loved, praised me, where I wouldn't suffer any harm. But it turns out that true happiness comes when I realize I'm not the center of the universe, and that's perfectly okay. When I no longer put myself at the center of every event, why are they treating me this way? Why is this happening to me? Do they think badly of me? I feel lighter. It turns out that most of the time, people aren't thinking about me at all. They're busy with the world inside their own heads, just as I used to be busy with the world inside mine. And when I removed myself from the lead role of every play, I found space to observe, to listen, to truly be present. I no longer reacted. I empathized. I no longer expected others to understand me immediately. I was patient. I no longer felt the need to prove anything. I lived authentically and let others live authentically. That was the most profound liberation I'd ever experienced. No longer controlled by the fear of what others think. When you no longer fear losing face, you can start living genuinely. You can say no when you want to refuse. You can say sorry when you make a mistake. You can say, I don't know, without feeling ashamed. You can cry without feeling weak. You can be silent without feeling abandoned. In that process, I also learned a very paradoxical thing. Sometimes what causes me suffering is not the circumstance itself, but the expectations I place upon that circumstance. I don't hurt because I was rejected. I hurt because I thought I shouldn't have been rejected. I'm not sad because friends don't listen. I'm sad because I thought they should understand me. It is these shoulds, invisible yet sharp, that are the root of so much discontent. And when I let go of those shoulds, I found the world became lighter. I no longer forced others to be the ideal versions in my head. I no longer demanded that everything go according to plan. I no longer blamed the past, nor rushed to pull the future closer. I learned to see everything as it is without coloring or editing. Happiness, as I understand it now, is not a destination. It is a way of living, an active choice repeated every day in every small thing. I choose not to engage in meaningless arguments. I choose to walk slower to feel the air. I choose to turn off my phone during meals. I choose to write down what makes me grateful. I choose to forgive, not because others deserve it, but because I deserve peace of mind. And I choose to keep my distance from things that drain my energy pointlessly. Negative news, toxic conversations, meaningless comparisons. I learned to protect my mind, not by closing it off, but by opening it in the right direction. Happiness doesn't come from having an easy life. It comes from having enough wisdom to accept life as it is, and enough courage to love it, to live authentically with it even when it's imperfect. And the truth is, no life is perfect. There are only people who learn to live fully with that imperfection. When you reach a certain level of peace, you will find that happiness is no longer about having more, but about having less worry, less control, less attachment, less craving. The less you have, the clearer you become. The clearer you become, the lighter you become. The lighter you become, the freer you become. And in that freedom, unostentatious, unadorned, happiness flows through you like a silent stream, soothing all anxieties, nourishing all kindness, and reminding you that simply being yourself is already enough. You chose to stay until the very end. That might say a lot, that you are on a journey, seeking something deeper, a direction, a principle for living, or simply a rare sense of empathy in this noisy world. Whatever the reason, I want to sincerely thank you, not with empty words, but with all the respect for someone willing to listen to such an introspective monologue. I don't believe that what you've just heard is immutable truth. Perhaps tomorrow you will reject some views I once held as correct. And that's good because the goal isn't for you to agree, but for you to think more deeply. If an idea here makes you uncomfortable, don't dismiss it too quickly. Observe that feeling. It might be an entryway to a new level of perception you haven't touched before. It would be truly meaningful if, after listening, you take a few minutes to leave a comment. Not just to praise or criticize, but for you to reflect on how you've navigated this intellectual journey, where you agreed, where you disagreed, and what here made you think more about your own life. Reviews not only help others find suitable books, but also serve as a way for you to record the imprint of your own understanding at this moment. And if you want this conversation to continue, please don't hesitate to send in suggestions for the next book you'd like to explore. No choice is meaningless, as long as it stems from a true impulse. Because perhaps what you want to read is precisely what many others also need to hear but haven't dared to voice. We are all unfinished drafts. Each book is just a slice in the process of editing ourselves. If the Almanac of Naval Ravikant has sparked a new perspective on freedom, happiness, how to live, and how to think, then I hope you won't stop at merely knowing something new, but will begin to become something. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate reason we read. Until next time.